Okay, good evening. My name is Larry Few, Director of the Global Affairs Center. Thank you very much for coming out this evening. Before we begin, I just have two quick announcements I want to make. This evening's program is being recorded for classroom use and other uses on campus, so be aware of that. And it also means that during the question and answer, if you have a question, we will remind you of this, but raise your hand and somebody will run to you with a microphone. It's not just about making sure that everybody else in the room can hear you. Sometimes some of us know for a fact that we have big mouths and that's not a problem, but the fact is the camera does a better job of picking it up without a lot of static if you're speaking into a microphone, so do that. And the second announcement I want to make is if you're carrying a cell phone, please turn it off or put it on silent. And now it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to Ara Reese Erickson, who teaches, is an ESL advisor here, and she personally knows the speaker, and she's going to do the introduction.
Thank you, Larry. When I think about my country, the word that comes to mind is diversity. Peru is diverse economically, politically, geographically, and ethnically. Tonight, I cannot think of a more qualified individual to lead the discussion of my fascinating country than Consul Velásquez. Consul Velásquez is a leader in the Peruvian community in Washington State. His educational background includes a law degree from Universidad San Martín de Porras de Lima, Peru, and a graduate degree from Seattle University. He has been serving in his post since 1997. In addition to doing that, he is dedicated to helping Peruvians here in Washington State, as well as my country, Peru. He does this by leading cultural efforts and promoting educational exchanges as well as business connections between Washington State and Peru. His list of accomplishments is too long to list tonight. I am very honored to have met Consul Velásquez. He is not only my compatriot, but my friend. Please help me welcome Consul Velásquez.
I will start with a question, as is practice in any higher education center like this one. And the question is, what is the country that is closest to heaven? And this is not a religious question, so don't get nervous. Please. What is the country that is closest to heaven? Nepal. Well, that's a good answer. Nepal? Huh? Peru? No. The one that closest to heaven is actually Brazil. We don't have the map here. Here. Well, Brazil, because it's next to Peru that is heaven. And that's what the Incas thought of Peru, the center of the universe, center of the world at that time, our little heaven. Let me give you some statistics about Peru that perhaps it will give you an idea about the vastity of Peru's wealth. I don't know if you know that Peru has more than 3,000 kinds of potato. I like to start with that because most people think that potatoes are from Idaho. And actually, potatoes are from Peru. There is even a sentence that says, I am not more Peruvian than a potato, you know? So, no, soy más peruano que la papa, ¿no? Entonces, potatoes actually grow in the different altitudes of Peru, and we have all kinds of potatoes. Colors, tastes, textures, a whole study about potatoes. Also, 55 varieties of corn. I don't know if you knew this too. We have wonderful corn. The people who have visited Peru have tried some of the best corn. And the official language of Peru, we have 3 languages in Peru that shows some of the diversity that Aura was mentioning before. We have, of course, Spanish, or what we used to call Castilian, Quechua, comes from the Incas' time, and Aymara, which is in the border with Bolivia, what is Puno now. 3 languages. And I'm sure you know some words in Quechua already. That's it? Any volunteer with that? Not the ones who have lived in Peru. Doesn't count for the class. Any ideas? If you know any words in Quechua, the language of the Incas? Quinoa, okay, that's one. We all know quinoa. Another one. If you get 2 right, you get a prize. This is a different kind of class. You get actually a prize. Any other volunteer? Quinoa and? Well, but words that you use here in the English language. You have quinoa, you have the word puma. What else? The word alpaca. What else? Condor, llama. One that is maybe not as known, but the word jerky. Jerky comes from the word charqui, which means dry meat in Quechua. Did you know that? No. You are here to learn. And the most known word, coca. Everybody knows coca. Coca-Cola, and the other kind of coca, of course. But what is the identity of Peruvians? That's a good question that somebody was asking me before I came. And are Peruvians identify as Latinos? It's something that we never ourselves introspect about that when we came to the United States. Are Peruvian Latinos? Well, they don't speak Latin, so they don't qualify for being Latinos, perhaps. Are they Hispanic? Well, Peruvians are not from Hispania. No, they want to be associated with the word that has Hispanic on it. So I don't know if we want to be Hispanic. We are Peruvians. We have a distinct identity, distinct culture, distinct gastronomy, history, and it's a little bit what we're going to not discuss but talk today. More than a lecture, I think it's a conversation about Peru. Some of the things you already know, and some things that we're all going to learn today. A little bit about Peruvians' history. But before that, I want to explain something, because we were talking about consulates, and sometimes it's good to understand our function here. The difference between a consulate or a consul and an embassy and an ambassador. Most people have idea there is a difference. I know some people here have worked in an embassy, so they have that very clear. But it's good to know. Consulates have a jurisdiction. Mine is Washington State, but I also help Peruvians that live in Oregon and Idaho and Alaska. The embassy is usually or always located in the capital of the country. So the Peruvian embassy is located in Washington, D.C., and is headed by an ambassador. And mostly they will be dedicated about political matters and trade, because they can deal directly, as a representative of our president, to the federal government. My relationship here is with our local community, the business community, and the desire to promote Peru and exchanges with Peru. So my job is more local, and our ambassador's job is more national and deals directly with the president, because the ambassador of a country represents the president of that nation. And there is a Peruvian consulate here since 1904, believe it or not. Most consulates at that time were located in Port Townsend, and there was a reason for that. If you go to Port Townsend, you will see the old German consulate, the old Japanese consulate located there, because the customs house of the United States was located there. And at that time, we have some history buffs here. At that time, consuls were very dedicated about the trade between the countries. So they have to legalize, certify the merchandise that was imported, exported. They have to deal with the crews of the ships. And because the U.S. Custom House was located in Port Townsend, they needed to be close to it. And then in 1906, 1907, They moved mostly to Seattle and some to Tacoma. And I have read the letter that our consul at that time wrote to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1905, requesting to move the consulate from Port Townsend to another city. And he says, "Dear Minister, it's time that we consider moving our office to a small city that is growing, Seattle," he says, "because this is where we need to be located, for trade and, and promotion of Peru." And that was 1905. In the 1920s, our consul at that time wrote about this company that was going to probably change the history of the world, Boeing, he said, and sent a lengthy report about Boeing. Because consuls at that time, that's what they used to do. They used to be the internet, They used to send the information to our countries. And that's how we learn about distant places. And that's what we're trying to do. What I'm trying to do now is trying to show you about a distant place that is not that far now. We are in the same Pacific coast, and we share many things, as you will see in a little bit. Talking about history of Peru, well, that will take us a degree, not a class, because there is so much to talk about Peru. Before the Incas, as probably many of know a little bit of the Incas empire in Peru, as the Aztecs were the two largest and most advanced civilizations in the Americas when the Spaniards arrived. The Incas were located in the southern part, and the capital, I shouldn't get closer here, the capital of the Incas, thank you so much. Technology is wonderful, isn't it? One day it's going to kill us all, but before that, we should use it the best way we have. I think it's that's not the one. Larry, where's the point? I don't know. Here we go. Here it is. Oh, the center.
In the center.
Usually is the one in the center. Okay, we have, here's it's not a TV that you're turning on like this, no? Here we have Lake Titicaca, but most people are not aware that before the Incas, there were large cultures, in Peru. We have, in the northern part of Peru, let's see, we have the Chimus, the Mochicas. In the southern part, the Nazca, the Paracas, and the Chavin in the center, here with a little northern part of Peru. Cultures that were very advanced in arts, and architecture, and math, medicine, and we can talk a little bit about each one, so it gives you an idea. The Incas took advantage of that. As they were expanding their kingdom that started in this area to the coast and the northern part of Peru, they took advantage of all that information and were able to have the civilization that we know now, the Inca Empire. But, for example, if you talk about the Nazca, have you heard about the Nazca lines? Many of you. These are not alien ships that came to Peru, as Shirley MacLaine, is that the name? Her name, the actress? Yeah. So famously one time promoted, actually were the ancient Peruvians. That these wonderful signs in the sun, we don't know now for all the purposes. We have some ideas of it, but they were smart. They just did it. That you can see only by air, those beautiful Nazca lines that you have heard. The Paracas were nearby. The Paracas was a culture that is magnificent in medicine. They did it's called brain surgery, or, they will and we know that people survive because we can tell that there is growth in the bone of the head and the portions where they performed the surgeries. They did wonderful textiles. There is some samples of those textiles at the Seattle Art Museum. I think someone took it as a souvenir and they forgot to return it to Peru. I'm fighting to be returned eventually. But in the meantime, you can enjoy it at Seattle Art Museum. And the textiles that they provide, or they produce in color, just with natural colors. And maybe the ladies will help me, and I don't want to be, but the points, when you needle sweater, the points, the number of points that they were able to accomplish was not be able to be done until probably 80, 90 years ago. That advance, for a textile. People were very amazed how they did it. In the northern part of Peru, we have the Chimus, we have the Mochicas, all these cultures before the Incas. If you visit Trujillo, you can see Chan Chan, the famous city of clay, which is beautiful. And recently, it was uncovered the temple of the sun and the moon near Chan Chan. And the good thing that it was preserved, these temples, is because they were covered and they were building on top of it like a pyramid, And because they covered them, every platform, the colors were preserved. So now that it's unearthed, you can see the beautiful colors, how they use them, and the stories that they told in these murals. And then, of course, we have, as I said, the Incas, the Inca Empire. We have the story of the beginning of our empire. I don't know, have you ever heard of this story? No? It's a beautiful story. How the children of the sun came out of Lake Titicaca and founded or started the Incas Empire. We have probably 140 years before the Spaniards arrived in the conquest. And you can read or you can see more of what we have of remnants of this architecture in the city of Cusco, mainly because it was the capital. They used to thought that it was the center of the world, Cusco. And they built beautiful temples and palaces and ceramics because the Inca used to live there. Many people have heard about Machu Picchu, of course. Machu Picchu was not recently, I don't want to use the word discover because I think it would be misleading. Hiram Bingham, which was a famous US archaeologist and discoverer working for National Geographic, was the one who I think put it in the knowledge of the world. But the people that were living there, they all knew about Machu Picchu. So it was not a mystery per se. There were a lot of families living already in Machu Picchu when Hiram Bingham came and what we said now discovered Machu Picchu. I would say 1910, I believe, something like that. And it was a major discovery for National Geographic, And Machu Picchu, as most people know, there are different versions of what it was used for. Some people think it was like a spa for the Incas because it's about, by train now it's 4 hours. Probably back then it was a couple of days or so, or 3, 4 days, for what is called now the Incas path and Inca Trail, yes, Ango Trail, thank you. No confusing with Shining Path, which is a different path. And it took around 3 to 4 days to arrive in Machu Picchu. I mean, and it was supposed to be because of the climate and near to the Amazon jungle, a really pleasant place for the Inca to spend some time there. But it was abandoned after the Spaniards came for many, many years, almost 400, until Hiram Bingham, as I said, showed it to the world. And most people always ask, why is that the Peruvians now live so far in the highlands, because we have a large population, people who live really far in the highlands of Peru. And looking at the history, at the time of the Incas, they didn't have a custom to live that high. Is that at the time of the colonization of Peru, they escaped the Spaniard conquest and they just moved to the highest portion to be left alone. That is still until now. And it's hard for our nation to give services and provide what is needed to these communities because they are so far in the highlands. So it gives you a little idea. When the Spaniards came to Peru, they encountered a little civil war. It was the right time when they arrived between the brothers Atahualpa and Huáscar. Remember that the Incas Empire covered Ecuador, what is now Ecuador, parts of Colombia, Bolivia, parts of Chile, and a little bit of Argentina. Believe it or not, that was the extension of the Incas Empire. So they arrived at the right time in history, in the sense for them, not for us, but for them, it was the right time. And they were with very few men to conquest Peru and stay there for 400 years, our colonial period, and brought a fusion between Europe and the Incas Empire. They found a civilization, and they were very impressed with what they found. Many of the structures that they found at that time, and that's what some people ask me about this, I said, why there are so many structures from the Incas or pre-Incas that are destroyed, that looks like piles of rocks or sand? And the answer is that at the time of the conquest, those temples or those buildings were assigned to the different conquistadores or part of the military groups that arrived as a mining rights. So an Spaniard was given the right to mine in a certain temple or a certain construction or buildings. And that's why they, looking for gold or precious things, most of the time destroy the walls and the edification itself. And we have a lot of places that even until now we still discover because they were left as a pile of rocks or sand that looks from the far, like a hill or a small hill, when actually we understand now they were buildings, at the time. So I'll give you an idea what happened there. But 400 years of colonization of Peru give us a very interesting position in South America. Sometimes people ask me, why is that most capitals of South America are located in the ports? And that can be answered by a teacher, or me. But Lima is by the coast, as more cities like Santiago and the major cities, because the Spaniards wanted to take all what they could through the ports of the major cities in South America. So for them, it was more convenient to have the capitals or the center of the administration near the sea, And that's why we have Lima, which has a horrible weather. I hope this is not being taped, but yes. Most people agree. There is other places in in Peru, that has such a wonderful weather. We should have Lima, or the capital of Peru, and other places to enjoy a better weather. But Lima itself suffers by El Niño, and sometimes La Niña, and Los Niños, and we have a horrible weather right in the coast. But if you leave Lima a little bit in the south and the north, as people who have lived there, they enjoy sun, and it's warmer, and it's nicer. But this is what we had at that time. We have two wonderful things if you visit Peru, by the way. You have Machu Picchu, which is one of the wonders of the world, and you have the Amazon, which is one of the natural wonders of the world. The Amazon River does not start in Brazil. It starts in Peru, believe it or not. Did you know that? That was me? Well, the Amazon is so big that you cannot see it, actually. and it's true. If you are in one side of the Amazon River, you cannot see the other side of the river. You see that you feel like you are looking at, this is one of the parts where the river actually is not that wider, but there is many parts of the Amazon that is that wide. So it's such an experience actually to visit the Amazon and the jungle when almost 13 different languages are spoken there, completely different of each other, in small groups. In the colonial times, there was an expression that still survives until now that is called vales un Perú. Have you heard that expression? It seems you are worth a Peru. Because for the Europeans at that time, Peru was gold, was wealth, and that expression, it was used until even recently in Europe when people said, you are worth a Peru. That was the idea of of the Europeans about the worth of gold and richness in Peru. Well, we jump very quickly to the independence, thank you, of Peru. We could go on talking about the Incas, but General San Martin, which actually is an Argentinian, started going into Chile, to Bolivia, and arrived in Peru, declaring the independence of this country. And this is a very interesting period in the Americas and in Europe. And some people say, why that was a little easy? No, it was that easy, but a little easy for General San Martin to declare independence in all these countries and in Peru. In Peru, it was not that easy for the fact that, as being in the center of South America, most Spanish armies were contracting in Peru. As the rebellion and independence was growing in other parts, in Venezuela and Argentina, the armies left were concentrated in Peru. And anybody is above history, what was happening in 1821 in Spain? No, in Spain. In Spain. We don't have any history professor here. Napoleon. He took over Spain, so the colonial possessions of Spain were like in a hiatus. You know, what was happening, because we didn't have a king at that time in Spain, so it was a great time for us to be independent. You know, when the Spaniards, they couldn't get their act together at that time. They were, didn't know what was going on in Europe. They were under Napoleon, and it was the right time for us to become independent. And General San Martin went to the main square in Lima and declared the independence of Peru. And he's also the one that dreamed of our flag, in red, white, and red. Oh, thank you. And you have the seal of Peru, and you see the vicuña there. You see the quinina tree, not the quinoa, the quinina tree, and the horn of plenty, of gold, showing the richness of Peru. The animal kingdom, the mineral, and also the floral of Peru. Now we talk about a little bit of the culture, because we have here to talk about Peru now, and we cannot talk about the culture of Peru without speaking about the gastronomy of Peru. I don't know if you know that. Because Peruvians are as fanatics about food as Argentinians about soccer. They are very fanatic about food, We decided to be good about something, India decided to be good about computers, and Hyderabad and those places 40 years ago. Peruvians decided we have to be good about food. And that was we already had a good gastronomy from the start, but 40 years ago we decided to be really, really good. And we have become one of the culinary destinations in the Americas. The 4 best restaurants in the world is in Lima. One of the, I think 2 of the 40 best restaurants in the world are also located in Lima. The best in Latin America is located in Lima. So we have been very intentional about taking advantage of the fusion of our food. And that has an explanation. We have huge immigration from China. Almost 10% of our population are from Chinese origin. We have almost 5% of our population of Japanese origin. We have a large descendants of Afro-descendants from Africa. And of course, we have our indigenous population that is more than 50%, almost 60%. And we have European influence. Italians, at one time, were the largest community in Lima, Spaniards. And we have this influence. They have picked, I didn't pick this menu today. Somebody else did, but we have the ceviche, which is not like any other country ceviche, I will tell you. Must be the lemon, I don't know. But we have, this dish is from Asian influence, which is originally was created in a wok. It has a little soy sauce on it. I will not give you the whole description of it because you have to try it. But it's called lomo saltado. And this one is called causa, I believe. And this has a name, causa or cause, because it was created for the independence of Peru, for the cause of independence. It's called causa. And it was sold, not like this. This is a more sophistication of the causa, but the basic one to get some funding for the independence of Peru. So Peruvians are very proud of it, and our gastronomy is one of the things that we're very proud. Perhaps you don't know, but we eat guinea pig. Do you know that? We love guinea pig. Guinea pig love us because we take care of them, and then they become part of us. So they are very loved, the guinea pigs. I know guinea pigs here are pets. I know, I respect that very much. But this is the Inca's food, and it's a powerful food, the meat of the guinea pig, what we call cuy. I know, nobody's perfect. There is always something there. We also have the pisco sour. Have you heard about the pisco sour? Oh, that was more popular than the guinea pig, I would say. Pisco is a brandy that is produced in Peru in a port that is called Pisco. It started there, and we are very proud of that. It's very tasty, and we created a pisco sour that many people have sometimes tried, Let's see. In our culture, we have been blessed, as I said, for this fusion of different groups and communities that right now are Peru. And one of the expressions is in our current president. Our current president is Pablo Kuczynski. His father, German, grandfather, Polish, mother, French. We have a president that was from Japanese origin, President Fujimori, here we have the visit of our president. Last week, he was in the White House, meeting with Mr. Trump. He has become the first Latin American president to visit the White House. They have a nice conversation. He has invited President Trump to visit Peru, and he has accepted. So he said he's going to be in Peru in 2018 as part of the America's Summit of Presidents. So hopefully that happened. It will be nice, I'm sure. We would like him to have some guinea pig and pisco sour there, too. And we have we'll talk a little bit about the free trade agreement at the end with the United States. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about things, from Peru and Washington State that I have been asked to talk about. Many people perhaps don't know that one of the first Europeans, he was not European, but the description is white, but that arrived in Washington State is Juan de la Bodega y Cuadra. Juan de la Bodega y Cuadra was born in Lima. Yes. At that time, he was under the Spanish crown, of course, but nevertheless, to us, he's Peruvian. And he was here for 2 years in Washington State with an expedition from Spain. And they have a lot of contacts with the native population here. And he died on his way back to Peru in the port of San Blas. San Blas is in Mexico, and at the time was a main port for the Spanish crown to go around the Pacific and to the Philippines. But he stayed here 2 years. And he's the one that established we have the current borders between Canada and the United States here in the Pacific Northwest. It hasn't been touched since that time. At that time was the British colony, of course, crown, and the Spanish crown. He was a little upset because he was here 2 years, trying to get more territory, and at the end, he didn't get it. But nevertheless, he respected that, and then he left. And this is the borders that we have now with Canada here in the Pacific Northwest because of Juan de la Bodega y Cuadra. One of the things I wanted to mention that perhaps people would like to know is that Peru has, and this is kind of interesting, has the second largest amount of shamans in the world, after India. I didn't know that either. I get a lot of inquiries about visiting Peru because of the shamans and a special practice that is called ayahuasca. I don't know, have you heard that? Where they have some, and I'm not promoting this, by the way. This is a description of a cultural activity, which is that they have like a chicha or a drink that is done by the shamans. I know some people are taking notes, don't. It takes about a few days to get this drink, and then people have a ceremony with the shamans, sometimes in the jungle of Peru or in the highlands of Peru, and they go back in their lives, and it takes, it's a process of 2-3 days. And for some people, they're very interested in that. They do it. They think it's great therapy. They help them. I have never seen it myself, but it's becoming a little tourist activity there for some. I personally do a lot of research before doing anything like this because you have to be careful with, but it's interesting. I didn't know that also that it was the second. Other thing that I found out that is very interesting, I knew we have a large number of orchids, but we have 1,625 types of orchids in Peru. Did you know that? I found out that myself. Also, that Peru is a surfer's paradise. Has a wave at 4 kilometers long. That's in Máncora and Piura. And has the world's largest left-handed point break. That I don't know. If someone knows about those things, can give it a little more. This I knew, which was the Cotohuasi, which is a canyon in Arequipa. Probably you visited Arequipa one time. Is, I think, twice as deep as the Grand Canyon here in the United States. That is interesting. Lake Titicaca is the world's highest navigable lake in the world. Perhaps that you knew. Half belongs to Peru and half belongs to Bolivia now. Mm-hmm. Peru is the 8th largest producer of coffee. We have great coffee. A couple of years ago, we won the best coffee in the world. And I had the chance to meet the winner. And something that I really like to share with you is that Peru has 9 different microclimates. And we are blessed with that because we have such a diversity in our flowers, plants, and the Amazon River has become like the pharmacy of the world. And that's why we have to all work to preserve it. Because there's so many things coming out of the Amazon, maca, which was the Viagra of the Incas, that's what they said. I don't know for sure, but this is not a joke. This is what it says officially. Uña de gato, I don't know, so if you know of those herbs. Many things, so we need to preserve the Amazon because we still need to find many more cures in the Amazon jungle. But because of the climates, is that we have such a differences in kinds of potato and fruits from the coast way up to the highlands and then to the Amazon jungle. One thing I wanted to also share with you regarding globalization and Washington State and Peru. I was approached a few years ago by a nation. I think it's called your tribal communities, nations here. And they have an exchange with an indigenous community in Cusco in Peru. And they became really good friends. They love the exchanges and the culture. So they told me, I said, Consul, we want to go there and we want to give them a gift, So I said, well, that's like a nice thought. Please think your gift well. And they went, I said, well, we want to ask them. So they went all the way to Cusco, to this indigenous community, and said, we want to give you a gift. What is that you want here in the community? for economic growth, because we have help from our casinos and we have some money there that we can share with you. And you know what the community asked? A taco factory. That is globalization. Because we don't have tacos in Peru. Tacos are from Mexico and Central America. And I said, how is that we are asking for taco factory in Peru? But it's because in Cusco, there is so much demand from American tourists for burritos and enchiladas that the people in Cusco were saying, what is this burritos and enchiladas and tacos? There is money to be made here. So the indigenous community start producing tortillas and to make tacos, you know. That was a very interesting example of globalization when we have that, and that was okay, you know. They still have a great experience with that. Washington State, of course, has Costco, and Costco buys from Peru $160 million a year in produce. Buys quinoa, buys kiwicha, blueberries, bananas, grapes. Have you seen the balloon grapes? If you haven't seen it, try them. Magnificent. Because we are blessed, once again, with these climates. So we produce things year-round. Many things, like asparagus. I had a little challenge a few years back between the Peruvian asparagus and Washington asparagus. I don't know if you know that. I was in the middle of that trade war, and Peruvian asparagus, as I said, in any free market, the buyer is the one who imposes, you know, the needs of the market, you know, price and freshness. So we're doing really well with Peruvian asparagus, which is big, tasty, and because of my work with the Peruvian asparagus, the Peruvian Asparagus Association invited me to visit Peru and visit the asparagus growers. And I couldn't believe it. They were producing asparagus twice a day. You could, isn't it? It's not like exactly. They will go in the morning and cut it, and they will go in the evening and cut it again. And they were producing year-round. That was hard for Washington State to compete. But we always can find something in the middle. So we are in the fresh asparagus production, and Washington State is canning it. And that's good for Washington State, too. And we were happy about that decision. That was not done by us, but it was the market itself. Because we don't place the price, it's the consumers that does. Peru signed a free trade agreement with the United States in 2009. It was signed finally. And I believe it's doing well for both of us. At least our president and Mr. Trump has think so, you know, that is working for us. We are producing things that the United States needs. The United States is exporting to Peru. And so far, it's working well. There is some parts of the agreement that takes care of our biodiversity and working together and save our biodiversity and taking care of it. The investors from the United States are well covered in our legal system here in the US. So we have a good agreement with the United States. Hopefully, we'll continue in that sense. But I just wanted to close with a sentence that Antonio Raimondi, which was an Italian that in Peru was studying the flowers, says one. He said, Peru is like a pauper, you know, mendigo, you know, a poor man, sitting in a gold bench, because we have so much richness. But that was at that time. I think now we have learned what we have. We need to preserve it. We need to grow it. And we need to do it together with natural partners like Washington State. Thank you very much. If you have any questions?
Remember, if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone to you. There's 2 microphones in the room.
One thing that's not mentioned in the facts here is the education of your people. What levels and so forth, what institutions, how do they compare with other countries in South America?
Thank you. That's a great question, and that's one of the goals of the last governments in Peru is our education. We're working really hard in infrastructure that is needed. Part of it has been accomplished, but it's still a lot to be done, especially in the rural areas and the highlands. But our curricula and our teachers, we are trying to put as much of our national budget into education now to reflect that interest that we have in educating our children. One of the things that is good, perhaps, is that English now is becoming more compulsory, and so more people have access to learn more about the world through the internet and English. But yes, this is something that is hard for, even though we have a large population that is educated, and it's expressed here. Our community of immigrants from Peru here are mostly professional, business people, trade people, and our families focus their children into education. So within the Latin American communities, perhaps Peruvians have the highest number of children in colleges, graduating from colleges, and having higher point average, which is we're very proud of that within the Latin American communities, because Peruvians place such an importance in education.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could you speak to politics in your country?
Aren't we all? Well, as we were talking about the roles of consulates and embassies, one of the main roles of our embassies is policies and politics, and they are the ones who are more called to present those issues to you than actually myself. But if you want to talk about our recent election, we just had one in 2016. President Kuczynski was elected president, and the second candidate was Keiko Fujimori, who was the daughter of President Fujimori. So that was very interesting to see the daughter of Japanese immigrants with the son of a German immigrant in Peru competing for election. But the anecdote of all of that is that the wife of President Kuczynski is an American. The husband of Ms. Fujimori is an American. So we'll have a first lady or first husband, an American anyway, if any other one win. So that was nice. And we have now Ms. Nancy Lange, who is a U.S. citizen, our first lady. And hopefully she will visit us very soon. That's what we are trying to accomplish.
Gracias. Can you talk a little bit about the condition of, I guess it would be Afro-Peruvians, in terms of representation in the government, politics, socioeconomic status, maybe representation in television, and various ways that racism is manifested? Yes. It's a very simple question.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that. I like the end of it. Oh, a very complex, simple question. I will give you my perspective. That I can give you. We call Peru the country of all bloods, el país de todas las sangres, because of our mixture and a fusion. And we call ourselves just one race, the human race, human race, because we feel that our blood is so intermixed that how can you describe someone from this particular group or that particular group? In the specific area of the Afro-descendants, as we call, from them we have inherited wonderful music. Afro-Peruvian music is magnificent. I wish I brought some examples of music too, because we are blessed with the music, the influence in food, in our gastronomy. But definitely, we still need to be more inclusive of the different groups. But I think the challenge will say what I said in the beginning, that we are all now so intermix in that sense. We all families, couldn't tell exactly if they descend from one group or the other. Myself, for example, from my father's side, I'm Italian and Spaniard. From my mother's side, I have indigenous and Spanish also. And sometimes people ask me, who am I? Wondering, and I am Peruvian, because Peruvian is like that. Sometimes at the consulate, I have someone whose last name is Chang or Wu. Sometimes I have people who, a Peruvian that their last name is, could be Fujimori. So we have that diversity in that sense in Peru, but so intermixed together that sometimes it will be hard to, But definitely, as I said, yes, we need to have more inclusion. Sometimes we don't have the best models on TV, I will say. That's one of the things that we are working on it, because there were a lot of stereotypes and thinking that it was funny. But it has to be funny for both of us, not just the people who laugh on the TV. And that's something that Peruvian TV is working, because it could be the meaning to certain groups to be portrayed the way they are, I don't know. I hope I answered a little bit of your question, but it's...
Well, representation in the government. Are there blacks in the government?
We will call it, well, we don't call it black, we call it Afro-descendant. And as I said, yes, in the sense that in the military and the Air Force, in the police, but it will be hard to just say this person is, for their look, is Afro-descendant, yes, Afro-descendant. We will say that it's Peruvian, perhaps with a darker skin than other Peruvians, but it's no less Peruvian than anybody else. Our Afro-descendant community is small, but it's not perhaps well represented in politics, as you said. Yeah.
Other questions? Wow.
Well.
They all want to go and eat.
Well, if you want to go to Peru, give us a call. We have wonderful brochures to give to. Oh, yes.
So what do Peruvians like to do for fun?
Oh, wow.
Besides eat, of course.
Well, if you're on the coast of Peru, there is a lot of water sports and sliding that you can do in the coast. I don't know if you have a picture of Lima. Lima is right in the coast of Peru. We have wonderful beaches in Peru that you can enjoy. This looks like this is the sun. But hiking, you see, here's the coast of Peru. Lima, very modern city. This is the Marriott Hotel. A couple years ago was selected the best Marriott in the world to stay. Peru also has one of the best, between the, I think, 25 best hotels in Cusco, and one of the best 25 hotels in the world. And in the Sacred Valley, I think is one of the best 20 small hotels, family-owned, because we have a wonderful hotel infrastructure now. This is the main square in Peru. You will see this is from the colonial times, our cathedral. In front, you will see our presidential palace that is more representative of contemporary times. And it was built in the place where Pizarro, the conquistador of Peru, had their home. Now we only see what we have seen now, this magnificent building, but it was done in the 1920s and 30s. What is another one there? Oh, this is Cusco. Cusco keeps more the Incans and colonial flavors in the city. That's the cathedral that you can visit. And that's the Church of the Jesuits, the Compañía Church. And if you see around the square, you will see some of the buildings from the colonial times. These are from 1600, 1700. And they are well preserved. Now, mostly hotels. If you go to Cusco, be sure to check the hotel prices. Now they are quite pricey nowadays. You have to find a good bargain. And probably you have seen Machu Picchu in many ways. And this is Huayna Picchu, which is the mountain behind the structure. This, what we call andenes, or what we say, a step, or no, it's steps. Terrace. That's where they used to have the potatoes or grow whatever is needed for this site. And then there are some main squares where they do ceremonial events. And there's some quarters for the Inca and their family. The Incas was not a monarchy as the Europeans had envisioned, so it's an hereditary monarchy. They pretty much designated who was the king or the Inca next. And to make it royal, what they will do to the best general or to the best leader is they will marry their ancestors. They will keep them, the ancestors and mummies, in different temples. And when it was time to make them royal, they would just marry them. Became family with the king or the Inca at that time because of this kind of ceremonies. To them, of course, makes sense. To us, it was a little. City of clay, and it's a construction before the Incas. But the Incas used it too. Well, thank you so much. As I say, if you decided to visit Peru and you want to have a little more information, please give us a call. We're more than happy to give you some brochures and some ideas and what to do for fun in Peru. Good night.